The Wizard of Oz has enchanted audiences of all ages for the past 85 years.
We wish to welcome you.
It's also provided a treasure trove of memorabilia for countless collectors.
On the set of The Wizard of Oz, the magic was an illusion, but the suffering was real. The Wicked Witch's screams weren't just acting, and the dangers behind the curtain were darker than anyone imagined. Actors were pushed past their limits, dangerous shortcuts were taken, and what happened on set would never be allowed today. How many people had to suffer to create this so-called classic? And why did no one stop the suffering when the whole world was watching the magic unfold? Join us as we uncover 20 shocking secrets that will ruin everything you thought you knew about Oz. Number 20. Ruby slippers, sold for $28 million. Let's start with something that'll blow your mind before we get into the really dark stuff. Those sparkly ruby slippers Dorothy clicks together. One pair, sold at auction in December 2024 for over $28 million. That's not a typo. $28 million. It's now the most expensive piece of movie memorabilia ever sold, beating out everything, costumes, props, you name it. But here's where it gets wild. Only 5 authentic pairs still exist. The rest disappeared decades ago, lost to time or private collections nobody knows about. And one of those 5 pairs was stolen from a museum in 2005. And it took the FBI more than a decade to recover them, turning those slippers into the subject of an actual federal investigation. Think about that. A pair of shoes from a children's movie became the target of a heist worthy of a crime thriller. The studio made several pairs for filming because Judy Garland needed backups for different scenes and reshoots, but most of them just vanished into Hollywood history. But why were they made ruby red in the first place? Number 19. Dorothy's dress isn't even the right colors. Everything you think you know about Dorothy's look is wrong. Starting with that iconic gingham dress. You see blue and white checkered fabric, right? Everyone does. It's burned into pop culture, that crisp blue and white pattern. Except it's not blue and white. It never was. The fabric is actually light blue and pink. Here's why. Early Technicolor cameras couldn't properly capture certain shades of blue. The technology was revolutionary for 1939, but it had serious limitations. Colors didn't register the way the human eye sees them. So costume designer Adrian had to get creative. She used pale pink threads mixed with light blue to create a checkered pattern that would trick the camera. The pink balanced out the color tones, and when filmed, the cameras registered it as the vivid blue and white we see in the final print. It's a complete optical illusion. Multiple versions of the dress were made for stunts, reshoots, and backups. Today, fewer than 6 original dresses are confirmed to exist. One was forgotten in a Catholic university storage room for almost 40 years before being rediscovered. It eventually sold at auction for over $1.5 million. But if they were willing to trick you about something as simple as colors, what else were they hiding? Number 18. The snow was actually deadly asbestos. That beautiful, magical snowfall drifting over Dorothy and her friends in the poppy field, the serene moment when they wake up covered in soft white flakes, that's industrial asbestos. Cancer-causing, lung-destroying, banned, in most countries, asbestos. In 1939, filmmakers didn't have artificial snow like we do today. They needed something fireproof that looked convincing under hot studio lights. Chrysotile asbestos was perfect. It was cheap, flame-resistant, and floated through the air, just like real snow. So they covered the entire set with it. They pumped it through the air for multiple takes. Dorothy, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and even little Toto were blanketed in toxic fibers during scene after scene. The cast breathed it in. It got in their hair, on their skin, in their lungs. Nobody knew. Or if they did, nobody cared enough to stop. We know now what asbestos does. Mesothelioma, lung cancer, respiratory diseases can take decades to appear. At the time, it was just another tool in Hollywood's magic kit. They used it in Christmas decorations, in household products, and in movies. The scene looks peaceful and dreamy on screen, but every flake falling on Dorothy's face was slowly poisoning everyone on that set. And speaking of things that looked magical, but were actually dangerous, number 17, the Cowardly Lion costume was sewn from a real lion. Bert Lahr's Cowardly Lion costume looked authentic because it was authentic. The studio sourced genuine hide to achieve the lifelike texture they needed under Technicolor's unforgiving lights. Fake materials looked obviously fake on camera, so they went with the real thing. They skinned a lion, treated the hide, and sewed it into a costume. And that costume weighed nearly 90 pounds. Think about that for a second. 90 pounds of dead animal strapped to a human body. Lahr had to wear this thing for hours under blazing studio lights that could reach temperatures over 100 degrees. The fur and skin trapped heat like an oven. He was drenched in sweat after every single take. But he couldn't just take quick breaks. He had to dance, perform pratfalls, deliver comedic timing, sing entire musical numbers, all while essentially wearing a portable sauna made from a jungle predator. Between takes, crew members had to help him out of the costume so he could cool down and avoid heat exhaustion. Then they'd stuff him back in and do it all over again. The costume was later sold at auction for $3 million. But at least Bert Lahr was a grown man who signed up for this. Not everyone on set had that choice. Number 16. Even Toto wasn't safe. Terry was a small Cairn Terrier who played Toto, and she became one of Hollywood's first animal stars. She was beloved on set, performed her own stunts, and charmed audiences worldwide. They broke her anyway. During the chaotic Winky Guard scene, where the Wicked Witch's soldiers marched through her castle, one of the actors accidentally stepped on Terry's paw. The injury was serious. Her paw bone cracked under the weight. She couldn't work. Terry needed 2 full weeks to recover, while a dog double filled in for several shots. Her trainer, Carl Spitz, personally cared for her during recovery. He made sure she was comfortable, protected, and safe. When she finally returned to set, she went right back to performing dangerous stunts, running across sets filled with smoke, fire, loud explosions, and dozens of people in heavy costumes who could barely see where they were stepping. Terry earned more money than most of the Munchkin actors, making her one of the highest-paid performers on set, despite being a dog. She became a Hollywood legend, appearing in multiple films throughout her career. At least Terry's injury was an accident. Some of the technical effects were intentionally dangerous. Number 15. The tornado was just a sock and dirt. Before we dive into the real horror show, here's something that'll actually make you appreciate old Hollywood ingenuity. That massive, terrifying tornado that sweeps Dorothy's house into Oz? It's a 35-foot-long muslin sock. No CGI or digital effects, just fabric, a crane, and some seriously clever engineering. The special effects team built a giant stocking-shaped funnel and attached it to a rig on the soundstage. The top connected to a crane that could swing it around, while the bottom was anchored to a movable base. They could twist it, spin it, and make it move exactly like a real tornado. Then they sprayed Fuller's Earth, a fine, powdery dust, into the air to create the illusion of swirling debris. Combined with strategic camera angles and dramatic lighting, the result looked shockingly realistic. It's genuinely impressive. This was 1939, and they pulled off an effect that still holds up today. So why didn't they apply that same creativity to protecting their cast? Number 14. The first Tin Man was poisoned and nearly died. Buddy Ebsen thought he'd landed the role of a lifetime when he was cast as the Tin Man. He was excited, ready. This was going to make his career. 9 days into filming, he couldn't breathe. The silver makeup covering his face and body was pure aluminum powder, fine metallic dust that looked spectacular under the lights but turned into a deadly cloud every time the makeup artists applied it. Ebsen inhaled it with every breath. It settled into his lungs, coating the delicate tissue with metal particles. The symptoms started gradually: shortness of breath, tightness in his chest, painful cramps throughout his entire body. Then it got worse. His lungs began shutting down. Ebsen collapsed on set and was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. doctors discovered his lungs were coated with aluminum dust, preventing him from getting enough oxygen. They put him in an iron lung, a mechanical breathing device, to keep him alive. He spent weeks in the hospital, weeks fighting for his life because of makeup. His lungs were permanently damaged. The studio's response was to replace him with Jack Haley and to keep filming. But surely they fixed the makeup problem after almost killing someone, right? Number 13. The replacement Tin Man got eye infections from his makeup. Jack Haley became the new Tin Man, and the studio promised him they'd fixed the makeup issue. No more deadly powder. They'd switched to an aluminium paste. Much safer, they said. It wasn't. The paste was thick and had to be applied in layers, covering his entire face, neck, and exposed skin. It hardened under the hot studio lights, pulling at his skin and making it difficult to move his facial muscles. After hours of wearing it, his skin would be raw, irritated, and sometimes blistered. Then the paste got in his eye. The metallic mixture caused a painful infection that forced Haley to take time off for medical treatment. His eye was inflamed, watering constantly, and vulnerable to further damage. Doctors had to intervene to prevent permanent injury, but that wasn't all. His costume added another layer of misery. Made of stiff metal plates and heavy padding, it restricted his movement and caused bruising across his torso, shoulders, and back. He could barely breathe in it, especially during dance numbers that required him to move quickly and hit precise marks. Every time you see the Tin Man smile warmly at Dorothy or perform those charming dance steps, you're watching a man in genuine physical pain. And he wasn't the only one whose costume became a torture device. Number 12. The Scarecrow's face mask was glued to his skin. Ray Bolger brought the Scarecrow to life with those incredible rubber-limbed dance moves and expressive physical comedy. He made the character feel loose, floppy, and completely effortless. Nothing about it was effortless. His face mask was made of thick rubber molded to look like burlap sacking. To keep it in place during his acrobatic stunts and complex choreography, the makeup team glued it directly to his skin. Not a temporary adhesive, strong theatrical glue designed to survive hours under hot lights and vigorous movement. After 12 to 14-hour shooting days, removing the mask became its own ordeal. The glue would pull at his skin as it came off, sometimes tearing the surface and leaving painful red marks. His face would be raw and tender, the skin irritated from both the adhesive and the rubber that had been pressed against it all day. The burlap makeup around his eyes caused constant itching and redness, and he couldn't scratch or rub his face to get relief. He just had to endure the discomfort while hitting every dance step perfectly and maintaining the Scarecrow's trademark cheerful expression. At least Bolger could still eat solid food between takes. Margaret Hamilton couldn't. Number 11. Margaret Hamilton could only drink liquid. Margaret Hamilton's green makeup didn't just look sinister, it was genuinely dangerous. The copper-based formula that gave the Wicked Witch her iconic color was highly toxic if ingested, so Hamilton couldn't eat. Not solid food, anyway. Once the green paint was on her skin, her body was essentially trapped beneath it. For the entire time she was in costume and makeup, her meals were reduced to liquids, soups, juices, anything thin enough to sip through a straw. One careless bite could have loosened the copper-based powder and sent flakes sliding into her mouth. And once inside her system, that poison was no longer just a costume hazard. It was a real threat to her health. Hour after hour, day after day, she sat under blinding lights with hunger gnawing at her stomach, while studio staff hovered nearby to make sure the makeup stayed intact. Think about working a full day, sometimes 12, 14, or 16 hours, and not being able to eat a real meal or grab a quick snack between takes. Just liquids, carefully sipped, while someone monitored to make sure she didn't smudge the makeup that was slowly poisoning her. Hamilton endured this for weeks during filming. She stayed professional, hit her marks, delivered that legendary cackle, and terrorized audiences worldwide, all while slowly starving and unable to eat like a normal human being. And then they set her on fire. Number 10. The Wicked Witch was set on fire. Here's where things go from dangerous to absolutely horrifying. You know that scene where the Wicked Witch disappears in Munchkinland? The flames, the smoke, the dramatic exit. Margaret Hamilton's costume and makeup were copper-based, highly flammable. The trap door was supposed to open before the pyrotechnics went off. It didn't. The flames erupted while she was still standing there, and the cameras kept rolling. Second-degree burns on her face, third-degree burns on her hands. That scream you hear in the movie? That's not acting. That's a woman literally burning alive. The flames consumed her green makeup, her costume, her skin. She was rushed off set in agony while crew members scrambled to extinguish the fire. The smell of burning flesh filled the soundstage. Cast members watched in horror as their colleagues suffered. She spent 6 weeks in the hospital recovering. 6 weeks of painful skin grafts, bandages, medications, and rehabilitation. When she finally returned to the set, she absolutely refused to work with any open flames or fire effects ever again. And here's the part that should make your blood run cold. They used that take, the one where she's actually burning. You've been watching her suffer, and you never knew. Surely after that horrific accident, they made the production safer, right? Number 9. Her stunt double's broomstick exploded mid-air. Betty Danko stepped in to perform the dangerous flying sequences Margaret Hamilton refused to do after her burns. She was a professional stunt performer, experienced and careful. They nearly killed her too. The broomstick had a special smoking pipe built into it to create the trailing smoke effect as the witch flew across the sky. During one take, Danko was strapped to the broom rig and lifted high into the air. The cameras rolled. Everything seemed fine. Then the pipe overheated and exploded. Flames shot directly into Danko's leg as the explosion threw her off balance. The rig malfunctioned, and she crashed to the ground from a significant height. The impact, combined with the burn, left her with severe injuries that required 11 days in the hospital. Doctors performed major skin grafts to repair the damage. The burns were deep, the tissue destroyed. She was left with permanent scarring and nerve damage. And you know what's even more insane? She came back. After 11 days, after the grafts, after the pain, she returned to the set and finished filming the remaining stunts. For the rest of her life, Betty Danko walked with a noticeable limp. Because in 1939, Hollywood, if you wanted to keep working, you shut up and got back on the burning broomstick. Number 8. Flying monkeys fell from broken wires. Repeatedly, the flying monkey sequences look whimsical and fantastical in the finished film. Filming them was a nightmare of crashes, injuries, and mechanical failures. Performers were strapped into experimental harnesses attached to thin piano wires, then hoisted high above the soundstage floor. The rigging was new technology, barely tested, and extremely dangerous. The wires were supposed to hold their weight while allowing them to fly across the set. They snapped multiple times. Actors plummeted from the air, crashing into painted backdrops, slamming onto the hard stage floor, or colliding with set pieces on the way down. Each fall brought injuries, bruises covering their bodies, cuts from sharp edges, sprains from impact, and the constant fear that the next wire would be the one that broke their back. The heavy wing costumes made everything worse. They threw off the performer's balance, making it impossible to control their movement when the wires malfunctioned. They couldn't protect themselves during falls. They just had to hang there praying the equipment held, and then do it again and again, scene after scene, take after take, with injuries mounting throughout production. The studio kept detailed records of the accidents but didn't stop filming. They just patched people up and sent them back into the air. But all of this, all the burns, the crashes, the toxic makeup, happened to adults who at least theoretically chose to be there. The worst abuse was reserved for the child at the center of it all. Number 7. Judy Garland was only 16 years old. Before we go any further, remember this. Judy Garland was 16 years old, not a seasoned adult performer or someone with the power to advocate for herself or walk away from dangerous conditions. A 16-year-old girl under exclusive contract to MGM Studios, which meant they owned her career, her image, and effectively her life. Everything you're about to hear happened to a child, a teenager who should have been worried about homework and friends and normal teenage things. Instead, she was trapped in a system designed to extract maximum value from her talent while destroying her health and well-being. She couldn't refuse, couldn't complain, couldn't tell anyone outside the studio what was happening. She was locked into a 7-year contract with a corporation that saw her as a product, not a person. 16. Keep that number in your head for the next few facts, because it makes everything that follows so much worse. So what did MGM do to this 16-year-old girl? Number 6. Studio executives called her a fat little pig with pigtails. Louis B. Mayer was the head of MGM Studios, one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. He looked at 16-years-old Judy Garland and called her a fat little pig with pigtails to her face, in front of other executives, repeatedly. This wasn't a private comment or a slip of the tongue. Mayer and other studio heads openly mocked Garland's appearance, criticizing her weight, her figure, and her face. They compared her to other young actresses and found her lacking. They told her she wasn't pretty enough, thin enough, or glamorous enough. She was a child. A child was being verbally abused by the adults who controlled her career. The studio saw her as a problem to be solved. She had an incredible voice and undeniable talent, but her body didn't match their vision of what Dorothy or a movie star should look like. So instead of adjusting their expectations or treating her with basic human decency, they decided to fix her. They were going to make her smaller, thinner, more acceptable, no matter what it took. And what it took was starvation. Number 5. They starved her on soup, coffee, and cigarettes. MGM put Judy Garland on one of the most brutal diets imaginable. For a growing 16 years old who needed proper nutrition, they allowed chicken soup, black coffee, and cigarettes. That's it. No solid meals, no balanced nutrition, no consideration for the fact that she was still physically developing and working 18-hour days under grueling conditions. The cigarettes weren't incidental, they were prescribed. Nicotine suppresses appetite, so the studio actively encouraged her to smoke to help her stop feeling hungry. They were teaching a teenager to use tobacco as an appetite suppressant. The chicken soup provided minimal calories and almost no nutritional value. The black coffee gave her caffeine to mask the exhaustion from not eating, and the cigarettes made her stop complaining about being hungry. She was constantly weak, constantly lightheaded, constantly struggling to maintain the energy needed for dance numbers, singing, and the emotional demands of the role. Her body was literally eating itself to stay functional, while the studio congratulated itself on making her look better on screen. This wasn't a diet. This was medically supervised starvation of a minor. And it was about to get even worse, because not eating enough to function wasn't the only way they controlled her body. Number 4. They sedated her around the clock. Her mother helped to keep Judy Garland functioning on minimal food and maximum work hours. MGM created a pharmaceutical schedule that would destroy her life. Amphetamines, pep pills, to wake her up and keep her energized during filming. They'd dose her in the morning, at lunch, and whenever her energy flagged during the 18-hour workdays. The pills made her heart race, suppressed her appetite even further, and kept her wired and working. Then, when filming finally wrapped for the day, she couldn't sleep. The amphetamines were still in her system, keeping her awake and anxious. So they gave her sleeping pills, barbiturates, to knock her out. 4 hours later, they'd wake her up and start the cycle again. Pep pills to wake up, work all day. Sleeping pills to crash. Mickey Rooney later confirmed they'd work 72 hours straight in this sedated state, barely conscious of what was happening. And here's the most heartbreaking part. Her own mother, Ethel Gum, participated in this. She believed the pills would help her daughter's performance. She wanted Judy to succeed so badly that she helped the studio chemically manipulate a 16-year-old's body and brain. This is where Judy Garland's lifelong addiction began. Not in some Hollywood party or moment of rebellion, right there, on the set of a children's movie, with her mother's approval, and a studio's systematic abuse. But controlling what went into her body wasn't enough. Number 3, they bound her chest to make her look like a little girl. Dorothy was supposed to be a young, innocent farm girl from Kansas. Judy Garland, at 16, was developing into a young woman. MGM saw this as a problem. Their solution? Physically bind her chest to flatten her figure and make her appear more childlike and prepubescent. They wrapped her torso in tight cloth bindings before putting her in costume, compressing her chest to eliminate any curves that might suggest maturity. This was painful, restrictive, and humiliating. It made breathing even more difficult during dance numbers and long filming days. But the studio didn't care about her comfort or dignity. They wanted Dorothy to look like an innocent child, and they were willing to physically restrain Garland's body to get that image. Combined with the starvation diet that had already stopped her normal development, the binding ensured she'd look exactly how they wanted on screen: young, small, non-threatening, and utterly controlled. And when she couldn't maintain that control, when she struggled with what they were doing to her, the adults around her responded with violence. Number 2, the director slapped her in the face, and drunk munchkins groped her. During the filming of The Cowardly Lion's big entrance, Judy Garland couldn't stop laughing. Something about the scene struck her as funny, and she kept breaking character. Take after take, she'd giggle and ruin the shot. Director Victor Fleming's solution was to take the 16-year-old aside and slap her across the face, hard. Then he told him, "Now, go in there and work." She did, because what choice did she have? The man directing the movie had just physically assaulted her, and everyone on set accepted it as normal. Fleming apparently felt guilty afterwards and told the crew they could punch him as punishment. Instead, Garland kissed him on the nose, a teenager so conditioned to please adults and smooth over conflict that she comforted the man who'd just hit her. But that wasn't the only abuse she endured from adults on set. According to Sid Luft, Garland's ex-husband, many of the male actors playing munchkins would show up to set drunk or hungover. They'd act disorderly, harass her, and on at least one occasion, they tried to put their hands up her dress. Think about that. Adult men inappropriately treated a 16-year-old girl, and the studio's response was to assign someone to watch the munchkin actors instead of removing them or protecting her properly. The production was more important than her safety. So how did all this dysfunction happen? How did an entire movie spiral this far out of control? Number 1, 4 directors couldn't finish the film. It was total chaos. The Wizard of Oz went through 4 different directors before it was finally completed, a clear sign that the entire production was in constant crisis. Norman Taurog shot early tests with Judy Garland, but was quickly replaced when the studio wanted a different vision for the film. Richard Thorpe stepped in and directed for almost 2 weeks, putting Dorothy in a blonde wig and heavy makeup that MGM later scrapped entirely. His footage was thrown out, and he was fired. George Cukor briefly joined the project, not to direct scenes, but to completely overhaul the characters' looks and coach Garland toward a more natural performance. He ditched the wig, removed the heavy makeup, and told her to just be herself. He left after a short time. Victor Fleming took over and directed the majority of the movie, shaping it into what we recognize today. But before production wrapped, he left to take over Gone with the Wind, which was having its own directorial crisis. King Vidor finished the film by shooting the black and white Kansas sequences that bookend Dorothy's journey. 4 directors, massive reshoots, completely discarded footage, constant creative upheaval. The production was so chaotic and mismanaged that they couldn't even keep consistent leadership, and that chaos created the perfect environment for abuse. When nobody's really in charge, when everyone's scrambling to save a troubled production, safety becomes optional. Protecting a teenage girl becomes inconvenient. Stopping to fix dangerous makeup or rigging slows everything down, so they just kept filming. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check out another interesting video by clicking on the link shown on your screen. See you on the other side.